So welcome back to another segment of Empowered Abroad. In this podcast, where we talk about international students' experiences who are currently in university and those who have graduated from university. It gives a good opportunity for all those wanting to go to university and already there, for international students to get to know about life, work, and everything relate regarding international life abroad. So today, I'm really thankful that we have Rayaan Amir over here, who graduated from University of Edinburgh, did his master's from there. So I'll let him give a bit of an introduction about yourself. Rayaan, could you please let the audience know where you did your bachelor's from, master's from, and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Yeah, so I did my undergrad in Turkey, Istanbul. University was called Bilgi University. That's where I started off things. That's where I sort of formed the base. And फिर उसके बाद worked in Karachi for about a year and a half or so. The initial plan was just going to be 6 months, but then we had the whole lockdown situation. तो उसकी वजह से things sort of simmered down. But it gave me a good opportunity because I started working over here during that year and a half ish period. Right after that, started my master's in Edinburgh at the University of Edinburgh, and I mastered in cognitive neuropsychology. Um, and yeah, right after that, started one job, then the second, and now three. So I've got three jobs at the moment, which are they're all part time jobs. So it sort of sums up to be one big full time job. The main thing I'm doing is my work at Royal Edinburgh Hospital. So I'm working as a research psychologist, and I am employed by the University of Edinburgh now, and working on a very fascinating research project with preterm infants. And the other two things that I'm doing on the side, one is it's more of like a once a week thing where I work as a mental health support practitioner, and I also work as a music producer.
That's cool. It's good to know that as an international student or someone who did their master's, you're able to juggle so many things. I think it's very important for anyone who goes abroad to do that. So
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's with some people they might just prefer having that just one thing to focus on, and that might be their jam. But I guess with me, I feel like, or for anybody else that feels that they can divide their time well, it's a great approach when you have two or three different things. It might sound stressful for a lot of people, but in a way, it's also great because you're never getting tired of anything. If you feel like you had a bad day at work or something got too stressful, you don't have to worry about it. You're like, "Chalo khair hai yaar." I don't have to deal with this for the next 2 3 days. I can move on to the next thing, and then you circulate back to that maybe a week later with a fresh mind. Leads you to be more productive as well that way.
yeah, for sure. Okay, so you have a very interesting background in the sense that you covered two different countries. So you went initially to Turkey, then you went to the
Right.
UK. So I'll start off from Turkey. What were you doing before you went to Bilki, and what is your motivation towards going to Turkey? Because it's a country which is promoted by a lot of counselors these days, and a lot of students are going there. So what's your motivation towards going there, and how's your application process like?
So my initial aim was maybe somewhere in the States. I had like a bunch of things on the list of places that I might apply to, and it was during A levels when I sort of, I don't know, fell in love with psychology, and I had to like go towards that
Yeah.
that field. The reason I picked Turkey, it was more of like an automatic thing because my dad had gotten a job over there back in 2015. So the whole family moved. uh And I was still planning to, okay, I'm going to stay here for 5 6 months, and then I'm going to try applying and maybe go somewhere abroad. But just because of the whole moving situation, and we got so busy with that I pretty much missed most of the deadlines, and I just didn't have time. There was so much going on at the time. So I thought that instead of waiting another whole year, because I was literally doing nothing in that flat, I just wanted to start something.
Yeah.
So I thought, maybe I could start off in Turkey because I don't need to worry about the visa and all those things because I
Yeah.
had my at least temporary residency at the time, so I
Okay.
could start studying if I wanted to. So yeah, it was sort of like that. Turkey was never on the list initially, and I didn't. I don't even think I knew anybody at the time. Albeit though it's a lot more popular. It's very common for people to go to Istanbul in particular when you talk about Turkey. Wo time पर तो I didn't. Maybe mushkil se I might have known like maybe one person that is in Turkey, and that too in a different city. So yeah, it was never the initial plan, but things just sort of fell that way, and came across Bilgi University, and that was the one, probably the only university at the time that was allowing spring semester intakes. Baki jo universities they were only allowing fall intakes. And again, I thought, okay, fine. If I have no other option, I'll wait till the fall. But if I can start something in the spring, might as well. And they had that option, and I got accepted over there.
So once you reached the university, how was your experience of the university? Was it like how you imagined it in terms of the quality of education and also generally Turkey as a place?
Yeah. Well, if you talk in terms of the environment, it was definitely what I expected. Maybe even beyond my expectations. It's I can't vouch for the situation right now, albeit though, because of the economy, things are a
Yeah.
little different. Like at the time, which would be when I started in back in 2016, वो time पर just going as a tourist was great, but even living there in such a beautiful city, it was I wouldn't say overwhelming, but overwhelmingly good.
Okay.
In a good way. Nice surroundings and everything. The one thing which was the major shocker for me was the language barrier, which I knew Pele said before going to Turkey, like
Mhm.
this will be a
Yeah.
problem. I just didn't assume it to be such a problem in university because the university I went to was sort of quoted as like, oh, this, they cater to international students. Most of the programs they offer are in English. So I'm like, okay, if most of the programs are all fully taught in English, anybody's in those classes should, they should all know English or they should be fluent at that because you've got the whole English test process before you get accepted by the university. So yeah, but like I said, that was a big shock for me because that was not the case. I was there in my first week, and Tabi I realized that yeah, the class might be taught in English, but nobody wants to speak English. I mean, I remember I've got a very clear flashback of my first class. It was me. I was the only international student in that class. It was me, probably another 100 Turkish students, right? And the teacher walks in and she starts speaking Turkish, and I was sitting right at the back at that time, so raised my hand up and I said, "Okay, oh, I'm sorry, but wasn't this class supposed to be in English?" And everybody turned around, looked like me, जैसे मैंने कोई crime commit कर लिया. I was like, "भाई, genuinely, I thought because that's what I'm paying for over here, right?" So it was a surreal experience at the beginning because I was very confused. I was like, "Where are the international students?"
Yeah.
And then slowly, I met some in the dorm, would meet some in some other classes, and of course, then some Turkish people as well who were very good at speaking English or बड़ा मजा आता था इन लोग के साथ. So yeah, so it took a while with the whole friends kind of thing. I guess with other universities, you meet a lot of people at the orientation or in your first week, and you've got groups already. But that wasn't necessarily the case with me. Ekto because I also joined in the spring, so there were fewer people that joined.
Yeah.
But then also because, like I said, just most of my classes, was just filled with a language which I had no idea of. So yeah, so the first year was difficult, but I think overall it got better. I did have the क्या कहते हैं, initial plan कि, this is too much for me. It's getting stressful. I'm probably gonna get a transfer after 2 years. Just get some good grades and get a transfer. But that's when it changed. And I think it was probably after the second year. Once you make some friends, I was getting good grades, which was a big deal for me because that wasn't the case in O and A levels. And I think I just got used to the environment as well, got more comfortable, and it just came to the point where I felt like, okay, maybe if I want to go for like an exchange program for a semester, I could do that, but I probably don't want to get a transfer and start everything all over now that I've sort of established myself here to some extent.
It's very interesting that you say about the language barrier. And the reason behind that is because we have a lot of prospective students who want to go to Turkey and generally a lot of European countries. And they always
Yeah.
oversee this issue. They really undermine it and they say that it's not really an issue. But coming from someone who has graduated from Europe, of course, Turkey is also a part in Europe, it's good to actually know that this is an issue. And if students are aware about that, it's fine, but they shouldn't downplay it. And we as counselors, of course, don't also downplay it because we get a lot of requests from people who come from European universities saying they want to transfer solely because of the language issues to UK, US
Oh yeah, yeah.
universities. So it's definitely a problem. So it's good that you're also shining light upon that fact. I want to ask you if you are a bit, of course, you would be aware of that. In Turkey, how's the finances like in terms of rupees annually? How much money would you be paying in terms of tuition fees and general living? If you could give a very rough estimate in terms of
Mhm.
rupees, or at least when you went.
Back when I was there, so what time of the economy was quite different. I think right now maybe 1 lira is like 11 rupees. What time per 1 lira was maybe 35 rupees. Should have then it got started to decrease. But I remember I think roughly the tuition fee per year was at least for the psychology program in that university was probably about $8,000 US dollars for the year, which would translate to I think the lower how much around 20 lakh rupees I think for the year. I'm not mistaken. Around that much living costs. I mean, I guess it sort of depends on how you spend your money as well. There was this one क्या कहते हैं, restaurant which I would go to very often. Bahad mein I started cooking, and that that saves you a lot of money. But if you're eating out every day or almost every day. Plus, you're if you're staying in a dorm as well, like a student accommodation.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, I can't remember the exact amount at the moment. But I can tell you this much that even Turkey Kasabse was still considered expensive for
yeah.
international students. Yeah, just not able to remember the full amount at the moment.
I
But
mean,
I
yeah.
was sorry.
No, 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 continue, continue.
Yeah, no, but I am able to say, okay, if you are, let's say, cooking mostly at home, yeah, if you're living in a like a shared flat, like an apartment, as opposed to a student accommodation, then of course you'd be saving a lot of money. And but it makes sense, in the first year, second year, if you're still in the student accommodation, you're eating out more and stuff. It's a new environment for all the international students coming in. So us sense me, you might be spending a little more money, but once you sort of get more comfortable over there, and if you're willing to get an apartment, yeah, flat, maybe share it with a couple of people, and like I said, maybe not ordering takeout 3 times a day.
Mm.
It's definitely going to help, especially a bigger situation where things are
Mm.
really like hiking up with the prices.
From the amount you gave me of the tuition fees, roughly about 20 lakh, I think that it wouldn't be wrong to assume that in today's day, with your accommodation, living plus tuition fees, it would be a rough estimate of at least 40 to 50 lakh annually in Turkey.
Probably, yeah, I would say
Uh,
so, yeah.
so I don't think that would be wrong to assume, because we also do deal in Turkey. We also do send some students to Bilgi
Mm-hmm.
University. We have in the past, and
Mm-hmm.
last student who went over there from us was about 2 years ago, and roughly this was the amount that they ended up giving annually. So I'm sure that this is the
Oh,
minimum
okay.
amount that they'll be also giving if they do go
Mm-hmm.
from this year. So one important thing, the last thing I'll touch on in regards to Turkey before we move on to your experience in UK, is how
Uh-huh.
is the job market over there? So once you graduate, how are the prospects in the job market? It's a question which a lot of people who go to Turkey ask, and it's actually one of the main reasons that a lot of people are going to Turkey these days. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's changed right now, so I can't vouch for a
Yeah,
big situation. But back when I did graduate, which was quite a while back, so 4 years ago maybe, um, full time per there wasn't much prospect for me as an international student, and the probably the main reason behind that was that most jobs required you to be fluent in Turkish,
yeah,
especially when it comes to, well, I guess it could be different from field to field, but if you purely talk about psychology, or more specifically clinical psychology or neuropsychology, the things I was more interested in. Vahan, again, if you're in a situation where you're going to take on some training, even as as an intern, and then eventually you go into maybe you go into some research, maybe you're going to take on some clients, whatever. It's pretty almost always the case where they require you to speak Turkish, because they know that most of the people coming in will only understand Turkish.
mm,
तो ये मसला हो सकता है. I'm not the best in languages, so that was, I mean, I understood basic Turkish, but उसके अलावा, it was just not enough for me to process. But for somebody that is able to learn the language quite well over the years while they're studying their bachelor's, I would say they definitely have more opportunities over there. They'll have to look more into the specifics of like how to obtain the work visa and all of those
yeah,
things, which I'm sure they could find through the government websites. But yeah, in terms of prospects for psychology, I think clinical psychology is one thing which is booming in Turkey, for those that are interested in that. But at the same time, if it's booming, that also means there's a lot of competition. So you've got maybe these many jobs, but that many people that are interested in it. Uske alawa, I think other fields of psychology that Turkey is looking into, I think, like things like forensic psychology, parts of cognitive psychology, psychological research, etc., etc. इसके लिए भी markets है, but it's still not as big as you'd want them to be. But I would definitely say, like, if somebody has these interests, they could still give it a shot, because if not, especially if somebody's coming from Pakistan, they're likely to have more scope over there in Turkey for some of these areas in psychology.
Okay, I just want like the viewers to understand one thing. Like Rayaan was also saying, I myself graduated from Monash University, Malaysia. So it's just important to understand in such countries, language barriers are a key factor. So what that means is that not only in your university time, but once you also graduate, they will of course want someone who is not only fluent in the language, but also fluent in their local traditions and culture, right? Because that's very
Yeah.
important in the job market. So it's definitely going to be a consideration in these kind of countries, which isn't an issue in UK, US. Not to say there aren't issues in UK, US, and the job market, but they're very different in terms of what the issues are compared to these European countries when you look for jobs in such countries. So It's good to hear your experience in Turkey. I'll move a bit towards your experience for your master's in the UK. You told me you did your
Mhm.
neuropsychology master's degree, right, from University of Edinburgh, if
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
mistaken. So, how
that's
was your
right.
time
Yeah.
in Edinburgh? Just walk me through how your university life was, how the study was, and how the studies were different in comparison to Turkey. I know it was an advanced degree, but just general work structure.
Yeah, no, it was a great experience. It was just a 1 year course. Usually these courses are around 2 years, but I think in the UK they
Yeah.
sort of just compress all the
Mhm.
information in one, uh, which made it more. There was a lot more pressure in terms of the expectations because you'd have to do all of those things within that 12-month period. But overall, I would say a good experience. A very different vibe from Turkey in terms of how the environment is, how expensive things are. That was one main thing. When I was in the UK, just buying an appetizer at a restaurant was not like it wasn't feasible, or just the your accommodation or your tuition fee. I mean, astronomical values. So that was a big hit, but I would say the course structure itself and everything like that. I did quite like Edinburgh. It was a bit confusing for me as well because I had a particular style of writing and presenting myself and presenting my ideas, which when I would do in Turkey, the teachers and professors would like the way I did, and then I sort of formulated a style over my that whole bachelor's period. So I thought, okay, I'm just gonna use this in the UK, and that's when I realized, okay, they work a little different over here. So you got to not entirely differently, but you sort of have to take those skills and knowledge that you have, and you got to cater it to what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Um, because again, like I said, expectations can be different. The Usensme was different. I did really like some of the professors I had at the University of Edinburgh. I mean, they would really challenge you, which on one hand, you got to do a lot of work, but on the other hand, I did appreciate that because it made me sort of push myself to the next level. So, and now when I reflect back on that, like doing a job right now, I remember those instances where I didn't feel like doing it, but I had to do it. And now it makes sense as to why I had to do it because that's the reason I'm able to do my job today.
What kind of
Um,
changes did you actually make? Just to follow up on that, you said you made some changes in your writing style and your approach when you came to the UK. What is that in specific, if you could elaborate?
one of the main things coming to my mind, and I guess almost every student in the UK, and especially in the psych field, will be able to relate to this,
Yeah.
is where you have to take an insane amount of information, right? Just references after reference after reference, and you have to summarize it, let's say, in just two paragraphs, two short
Mm,
paragraphs,
yeah.
which back in undergrad it wasn't too much of an issue because at least in my university, I had the freedom to keep writing and writing, just express what you want to express. That's what the teachers were interested over there. They didn't care if it goes a little longer as long as you've got the information correct, right? Or as long as what you're giving them makes sense. But Masters Camper, it was quite different. QK, they did want, of course, the information to make sense, but they wanted you to make it very concise. And the reason that was problematic was, when I would try to make it concise, I would always have comments, from the professors like, "Oh, what do you mean by this?" Or "Please elaborate." And I was like, "Well, I would love to elaborate, but you don't let me because you tell me to make it that short."
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that was a big challenge. And I remember having, especially with one or two professors, like long discussions on like, how do I fix this? Because I said I do want to make it shorter, but then you want more information. How does that work? So it was so I mean then they explained the whole process of how to cut words down, how you might think something might be this long, but it's actually very short. But it's just techniques on trying to figure that out. So I worked on that for a good couple of months, and yeah, so that was one of the major changes I made. And like I said, it really benefited me in my current jobs because there are times where I have to submit a lot of information, and it makes a lot more sense to sort of provide all that information within just one page instead of 20 pages. Okay, whoever else is reading
Yeah,
because everybody's very busy, especially when
yeah,
it comes to the job, work life, job life.
yeah.
So the more concise you can make it, the better.
It's easier for them to digest.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
So that's something which a lot of listeners would want to know. Okay, you just touched on that right now. Is the jobs which you're currently occupied in. So how did you get those jobs? And there's a post-study work visa which you get throughout UK, right? Which allows you to basically find a job within the UK. How did you utilize that, and how did you get the jobs that you currently have? And just in addition to that, are you currently a sponsored job or is it a non-sponsored job? And yeah, just explain that.
Yeah. So initially, when I started working in Edinburgh, it was while I was on the student visa. I had started a job because the student visa allows, I think it's 20 hours a week
Yeah,
that you're
for part-time
that you can
jobs.
work. Yeah, so that's when I should remember when I got the job as a mental health support practitioner. And to be honest, this is one of those jobs where, yeah, I guess if you've got a psych degree background, it does make sense to start this off as a base if you can't find anything else, because you are supporting people that are, part of a clinical population, and it gives you something to put on your CV. It gives you some experience as well, and yeah, it teaches you some things. But it's still not something that somebody that only has a psych degree can apply for. I mean, most of the people I met at work, yeah, some people had degrees similar to mine, but others had degrees in other fields. Some people were currently studying as well, and they got accepted by the job. So it's one of those things where, as long as you take an interest in support practitioner related work, you can probably manage it. And there are companies in the UK that, I'm not saying it's not very easy to get accepted, but it's probably easier than other jobs which have a lot more requirements. So that's where I first started, and uske baad, that's after I graduated, I got the graduate visa, which then, as you said, lasts for 2 years, and I got the job the main job that I'm currently doing at the hospital as a research psychologist. That is not a sponsored job. It's just your average regular part-time job. So I go there 3 times a week, and क्या कहते हैं, yeah, so that would be the part-time thing, and then the third thing I was going to mention, the music production work. That's purely a freelance thing, so that wasn't something which I had to search for. That was something I was doing Pele say from Karachi. So I just continued it over there. I wasn't able to do it while I was on my student visa, because student visa per you're not allowed to freelance.
Yeah,
I think some people try to get away with it, but not worth the risk, in my opinion. I would say, just in case you had some money coming to your bank account, you get caught, you don't want to get
yeah,
sent back to Pakistan or
100%.
wherever you're coming from. So yeah, so I waited till I got my graduate visa, and then I started the freelancing, which is, like I said, it was something I was already doing. But I would say that if anybody does, like, as if there's somebody on a graduate visa that does want to do any freelance work, they do have to make sure they've got a couple of things sorted, like registering. I don't know if it's registering for HMRC के नाम से. It's a government related thing. We have to register for taxes, and you have to make sure you pay your taxes on time as well, because as a freelancer, they will monitor those things. If they know you're a freelancer, they will monitor those things, and you shouldn't try to get. It can be a shame at times, because you feel like you don't have too much money coming from freelance work, but at the end of the day, you gotta you gotta pay your taxes.
Yeah, of course.
Was there anything else you asked in that question, by the way?
No, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to know that how you actually land upon these jobs, which you just right now touched on. And it's good to know that, like I said before, that you're doing three jobs at once. It's quite good to know that you're also pursuing your passion project. So, do you have any intentions, or like, do you plan in the future that you want to try and convert these jobs to a sponsored job, and of course, try to continue to stay in the UK?
Oh, definitely, yeah, yeah. Because I've got quite a few interests when it comes to the field of psychology, mostly towards, like I said, cognitive or neuropsychology, even a fair amount of clinical psychology as well. But it does keep changing here and there, and that's purely just because of the opportunities you get over here. Like I mentioned, the job that I have at the hospital. When I came across it, well, firstly, I was very glad that I met the requirements, because they did have specific requirements, like, you have to have a degree in
Mm,
XYZ, you have to have this much experience, you have to have this,
yeah.
and luckily I ticked those boxes, and I got the job over there. And this sort of changed my perspective on working with children, because initially, when I would be my prior work experience was working with adults mostly, like in the clinical population. But thanks to this job, there's a lot more I learned about, child development, adolescent development. And again, it's sort of a twist in my mind, where I started thinking about, okay, you know what, maybe if I got another job opportunity where I'm working with children, I wouldn't immediately just say no. I would definitely consider it now. So a lot of the times, you might have a particular idea in mind कि चलो 10 साल बाद मैं ये करूँगा,
Mm,
but when you do certain degrees during the क्या कहते हैं, पढ़ाई as well, while you're doing your undergrad or masters, a lot of the times when you're taking certain courses, that's when you start to realize as well, oh, maybe this is not what I want to do. Maybe I want to try this out. Maybe I want to try that. And then also when you're in certain jobs, you might come to the realization that, okay, maybe I thought I liked this, and maybe I do to some extent, but not as much as this thing which has come about. So it's a very it keeps changing, but I'd say as long as you're enjoying the process, or at least to the point where you're not burning out, you're still
Yeah.
having a good time, it's something you like doing, it's more of a something that you're passionate about. I'd say even if it keeps changing, year after year, just keep going for it.
That's great. Great to hear. So I'll just talk about one more thing before we do end this podcast. That is
Yeah,
that
sure.
I was just talking about how 2 years ago we placed a student to Bilki University, and that got me thinking how before we were a part of this podcast, I was talking to you before this, and your sister was placed into Bilki University, and she
She
also
was, yeah.
went through us. So if you could just talk about very briefly, because you must have, of course, talked to her once she was placed, about how her experience with us was, was she satisfied? And yeah, just if you could touch upon that before we do conclude.
Yeah, no, I think based on what she told me about the whole process, her experience was great, and she every time she would feel bad, like, oh no, these guys are helping me out a bit too much. I was like, yeah, but that's their job. They're there for you because
Yeah,
they want to help you get
yeah,
to the university. Because and I think, but I think in a way that would be a great compliment for you guys, because there was so much help available
yeah.
that it was almost to the point where she's like, no, I think I should do some of the work myself. So she was very happy in that sense. Well, she was actually, well, we had a whole different situation with her. We don't know what the reason was. Initially, the visas had gotten rejected, which is not a common thing for a Turkey thing. But then later on, after another try, and there was nothing wrong with the application itself. It was more of an embassy related thing.
Yeah.
And we talked to you guys. It was all sorted out, and now she's in Turkey. She's having a good time over there right now.
It's really good to hear, Ryan. It's really good to talk to you today. It's really good to hear that all the experiences you had in Turkey, all the experiences you had in the UK, and it's really refreshing to hear how someone can balance three things at once, first of all, and second of all, explain their diverse journey throughout two different countries and their international experience in two different countries. So I think this was an extremely insightful podcast, and it was great to hear that you are continuing to do what you love, at the same time continue to do what you are also passionate about. So again, really nice to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time, and
My
I hope I
pleasure,
can
man.
also, talk to you in the future.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, of course, man.
So with that, thank you so much, and for everyone listening, please join us for the next episode of our Empowered Abroad podcast. Thank you so much. Till next time, love is. Take care.